I knew they had sent the email. I just didn't expect to read it that very morning, right after receiving the official letter promoting me to vice president for the Asia region. And the irony, the email inviting the family to the reunion wasn't sent to me. Annual Brooks Family Beach House reunion. Save the date. My sister Tanya still writes like she's doing PR for a luxury resort. The subject line radiated her trademark enthusiasm, the perfect eldest sibling vibe. She sent it to everyone in the family from my brother-in-law to my mom's best friend, but my name was nowhere to be found. As always. The only difference this time, I knew about it before even opening the email. It didn't show up in my inbox. It was forwarded to me by Remington, my trusted colleague who watches out for me like a second big brother. "You okay?" he asked, standing quietly behind me as I opened the email on my computer screen in the glass-walled office of a New York financial district skyscraper. I nodded, quickly closing the email window. "I'm fine. Just a family email." I gave a short laugh as if it didn't touch a single nerve in me, but it did. Deeply. I'm Elena Brooks, 35 years old. Chief Strategy Officer for one of the largest financial conglomerates on the East Coast of the U.S. The only woman in the executive boardroom. The one just nominated to be vice president for the Asia region, a position previously reserved for foreign men. I'm also the second daughter of the Brooks family from Virginia, a family that hasn't invited me to their reunions for the past 5 years. There's something strange about success. It's not enough to make people love you, if from the start they've decided you don't belong. My phone rang. It was Mom. "Hello, sweetheart," she began in that syrupy tone she always used before delivering a rejection. "Have you read the email Tanya said you haven't responded? Honestly, it's a bit crowded this year. Tanya's kids are getting bigger, and with Derek's family. Space is tight. But if you really want to come, I'll try to arrange something." I sat in silence. On my desk was the promotion letter printed on elegant blue letterhead with the CEO's signature. Yet my mother, the woman who gave birth to me, was hesitating, offering me an invitation to my own home, as if it were a favor. "It's okay, Mom. I understand." I heard a soft exhale on the other end, and her voice softened. "It's good that you're so mature now, Elena. No longer so sensitive. I'm proud of how grown up you've become." Mature. Right. The price of maturity is learning to nod when others reject you, even when you're no longer the stubborn child fighting back. After the call, I sat alone in my office. The lights from the building across the street filtered in like an artificial skyline. Everything outside was bright, but inside, not quite. Remington returned, placing a coffee on my desk. "You know sometimes success is the best response." I gave a faint smile. "No. Success is when they can't ignore me anymore." And I realized it was time to stop waiting for an invitation. I would rewrite my own story, starting from the first chapter. I opened my laptop, typed a few quick lines, logged into a real estate listing site, entered the address 212 Beach Road, Virginia, the beach house of my childhood. What would happen if I bought it back? Some houses are more than just homes. They're where memories sleep in every crevice of wood, every weathered wall, every crash of waves against the shore. But some houses, like my family's beach house, are where memories are stifled, surviving only in the mind of someone who wasn't welcome. I stood in front of the glass window on the 46th floor of my Manhattan penthouse. It was dusk. The city lit up like an upside-down map of stars. Those twinkling lights once symbolized the dreams I chased. Today, they reflected only one thing: I had made it here alone. And my family, none of them saw it. Savannah walked in from the private elevator. She shrugged off her long coat, tossed it onto a chair, and handed me a glass of white wine. "The world knows you're about to run half of Asia," she said, leaning against the bar, "and your family still acts like you're living off a college scholarship." I laughed. Faintly, not bitterly. Remington called right then. I put him on speaker. "You know," he said in his thick Boston accent, "if it were me, I'd send them a fake invitation just to see how they react when they're the ones left out." "I don't play those games," I replied. "I don't want revenge. I want to take back my place." "Take back?" Savannah raised an eyebrow. "What are you thinking?" I took a sip of wine, breathed deeply, and opened my laptop. Something urged me to return to those memories, not to mourn them, but to redefine them my way. I browsed a real estate catalog for coastal Virginia, not expecting anything special. But when I typed in the address of the old house, 212 Beach Road, I nearly dropped my wine glass. The house was for sale. With a simple description, 3-story Victorian beachfront home, needs minor repairs. Owner seeks quick transfer due to financial reasons. I didn't need to read further. I knew every plank, every step of that house. I knew the smell of sea breeze mixed with peach pie every summer. I also knew the chill down my spine when as a 12-year-old I was asked to stay in the kitchen washing dishes, while my sister and brother sat with Dad on the porch, talking about big things. "What's that?" Savannah asked, stepping closer, peering at the screen. I turned the laptop toward her. "My family's house." She squinted. "You mean, they're selling it?" I nodded. Savannah swore. "They didn't tell you anything." "No, like everything else. But this time I'm not standing on the sidelines." I clicked the contact agent button. Remington from the other end of the call said softly, "You're going to buy it?" "Yes," I replied. "If they won't give me a place in the family, I'll create my own." Starting from the very place they thought I didn't belong. "What would you do if you had the chance to own the place that once rejected you?" "Tell me. I'm not sure if this feeling is right, but it's clear." Savannah poured more wine for both of us. "They'll be shocked. Tanya will lose it. Derek will say something stupid as always. And Margaret, your mom, will say it's a misunderstanding." I didn't respond. I just stared at the screen where the blurry image of the beach house appeared. It was like an old, faded photograph. But below it, the text was clear. Price negotiable. Owner needs to sell urgently. Truthfully, I'd suspected something for a while. Small signs, Tanya mentioning the high maintenance costs of the house, or Derek asking to borrow money for a new project before brushing it off. But I never thought they'd sell the house without saying a word to me. I asked the real estate agent who's listed as the seller. The assistant quickly checked the file. Richard Brooks, sole owner, my father. The man who once told me women don't need to understand finance, who said not to dream too big about business because it's not for girls, who left halfway through my MBA graduation to take Tanya to meet a lawyer colleague. Savannah touched my arm. "You okay?" I nodded. But something inside me was breaking, not pain. An awakening. I signed the appraisal request, asking to keep the buyer's identity confidential. I put down 10% of the value up front, all through a private holding company I control. This wasn't revenge. This was an investment in agency, in controlling my own story. That night I lay on the long sofa, sleepless. I thought about the last time I was invited to that house 10 years ago, when Tanya was preparing for her wedding, and I had just been rejected for a managerial role because I lacked leadership experience. I washed dishes all night at that wedding. No one noticed when I left early. No one called to check. If anyone ever saw me as a shadow in that house now, I would be the one turning on the light to make everything clear. The next morning, Remington texted, "I thought about what you said success is when they can't ignore you anymore. Now I believe you've started in the right place." I didn't reply. I just sent him an old photo I'd found me at 9 standing alone on the beach house porch holding a notebook while Tanya and Derek sat on Dad's lap. I once thought I was the kid no one remembered. Now I think that kid might be the one to make the whole family remember everything. Not everyone gets the chance to return to a place that once hurt them with an entirely different standing. The morning I was officially nominated as vice president for the Asia region was also the day I signed the contract to legally own the beach house. 2 contracts, one representing the pinnacle of my career, the other an old wound, came together at once. Ironic, or perhaps fated. My office that morning was bathed in spring sunlight, but my heart wasn't entirely at peace. I adjusted Remington's tie before we stepped into the final negotiation with the Richardson conglomerate. He smiled. "You know, Elena, one day people will cite this deal as a case study in textbooks." I gave a soft laugh. "And I'll be the chapter on women redefining power." "No," he said seriously. "You'll be the definition." 3 hours later, we walked out of the boardroom with a handshake from the aging billionaire Richardson. My board members could barely contain their excitement. I was invited to speak at an internal press conference immediately, and for the first time I saw my portrait hung alongside the company's global strategic leaders. But in my mind, another image lingered. The weathered white beach house, its dark shingles, where I once sat quietly staring at the ocean, wondering, do I really belong here? Now I know I don't just belong. I own it. On the way home, I stopped at my usual cafe where Savannah was waiting with 2 lattes and a mischievous glint in her eye. "Did you sign everything?" I replied, placing the document bag on the table. "So," she leaned in, whispering, "the one they once excluded is now the one deciding where their cherished memories take place." I paused for a few seconds. "They don't know yet, but they will soon," she smirked. "And they won't see it coming." I laughed. Not out of revenge, but because I could feel control returning to my hands, not to destroy, but to rewrite. That evening I opened my inbox. A new email from Tanya with the familiar subject, Brooks Family, 2025 Annual Reunion. The content was the same as every year, a sweet invitation sent to every family member except me. I knew it. They always cited the house not having enough rooms or prioritizing the kids. But this time, one detail made me raise an eyebrow. "We're so lucky the new owner agreed to let us use the place for this year's vacation." The new owner. Me. They had no idea. Reading that part, I sighed, unsure whether to laugh or feel sad. There was a strange sensation, like I was watching a play where I was both the director and the secret character. I texted Carla, the real estate agent, confirm the paperwork is finalized. Ready to provide a lease agreement with special terms require confidentiality of the owner's identity. She replied, drafted and ready. "The Brooks family can use it as agreed. They have no idea it's you." Savannah sat on my sofa munching popcorn while watching the news clip of my press conference. She turned down the volume and looked at me sideways. "You're really going to let them hold the reunion without knowing?" "Not yet," I said. "I want them to show up, walk in, and wonder why things feel off." "Do you think I'm being cruel? If it were you, would you reveal your identity right away? Or would you wait like me to see if your family realizes the value of the one they once excluded? Let me know in the comments. I'd like to hear another perspective." I stood up and walked to the penthouse balcony. The New York night sky stretched wide, but in my mind was the Virginia sky, where the house stood silently through the summers gone by. I didn't want to use ownership to threaten, but I also didn't want to keep living like a shadow. This was no longer about revenge. It was about reclaiming the place that should have been mine all along. Remington called just as I was thinking about the day I'd return. He said Richardson just called. "They want you to lead the team to Hong Kong next month for the first phase." I nodded slightly. Time to fly far, but also time to come back, I added like a whisper to myself. The metallic clink of keys rattled, hesitated, then stopped. I stood behind the white wooden door, hand lightly on the knob, listening to the chaos on the porch. "What's going on, Mom? Why won't the key work?" Tanya's voice confused. "No way. Dad checked the lock just last month." My mother, her voice trembling slightly. I could picture it clearly them, with backpacks on, dragging suitcases, fumbling for the keys that once symbolized ownership. But this morning, that door rejected them. I gently turned the knob and opened it. Sunlight flooded the hallway, and the family's eyes locked onto me. Tanya froze. Dad stiffened, his hand still gripping the suitcase. Mom gasped softly. "Elena," I smiled, keeping my voice calm. "Welcome to my home." That moment, imagine it with me, where the one once excluded from the table is now the one inviting them in. No anger, no revenge, just a truth laid bare. The roles have shifted. And this is a reality they can't turn away from. Tanya stammered. You live here." I tilted my head. "Not exactly, but I do own it now." "How?" Dad asked softly, his voice aging a few years in a single sentence. "Come inside. It's sunny out," I said, stepping aside. "The house always welcomes family, as long as they knock the right way." They stepped in hesitant, their eyes scanning the familiar details. Now refurbished, new hardwood floors, elegant wall art, the faint aroma of Colombian coffee in the air. I led them to the living room. Dad was the first to sit still, clutching his suitcase. Mom's eyes darted around as if she couldn't believe what she saw. "What's this about?" Tanya asked, her gaze fixed on me. I sat across from them. "It's change. It's the first time in years I didn't wait for an email invitation. I decided to open this door myself. Should I have said everything? Then, should I have told them about the nights I lay alone in my penthouse, my mind filled with the sound of childhood waves? About buying the house under my private company's name after quietly paying off the bank debt my father had been forced to take? I didn't tell them. Not out of fear, but because I wanted them to wonder to seek answers they'd never cared about before. "The old keys don't work anymore," I said, looking out the window, "because they've been replaced with a new door, a new beginning." The air grew heavy. Mom spoke first, her voice soft as a breath. "You bought the house." I nodded, officially and legally. "But this?" Dad started, then stopped. His eyes couldn't hide the hurt, but mixed with it was something else, like remorse, like guilt. "I didn't do this to shame anyone," I said, looking straight at him. "I did it because this house was once a place where I wasn't welcome. And if anyone deserved to save it from foreclosure, it should be the one who was pushed out." "Foreclosure?" Tanya flinched. "You mean the house was almost taken by the bank I didn't speak?" But my silence was answer enough. Mom covered her mouth. "Oh my God," Dad bowed his head. After a long pause, he said, "I sold the house to pay off debts. For bad investments I hid from everyone. For Derek." The room fell silent. Tanya turned to him, too shocked to speak. I wasn't surprised. I'd known since I reviewed the sale records, since I saw Dad's signature on the contract. But I let him say it. Let him have the chance to be honest, even if late. I knew I said softer than ever. "And I also knew you didn't want anyone to know." He looked up at me, and for the first time in years his eyes held gratitude. "It was you who—" "Paid it off," I confirmed. "Under my company's name. No one needs to know. Just an investment." Savannah walked in at that moment carrying a tray of pastries and coffee. "I'm guessing we're at the gentle reconciliation part now?" She smiled, her presence easing the tension. Tanya quietly took a coffee, then asked softly, "Are you angry?" I thought for a moment. I was. But now if I feel anything, it's regret. Regret for the years it took me to realize some people don't need to prove anything anymore, just exist. I glanced at an old family photo I'd kept placed in the center of the living room. This house will always be a place for memories, but it'll also be where I rebuild what was missing. Chapter 6. A Father's Confession. Some meals aren't just for eating. Some tables aren't just for serving food, but for laying bare memories, truths, and things that should have been said long ago. That evening, the beach house kitchen glowed as it had so many times before. But unlike other years, this time I set the table. I chose the wine, served the dishes, and took the spot Mom always reserved for the host. This time, that was me. The family took their seats quieter than usual. Gone were the lively stories about travel plans, Tanya's work, or Derek's harmless jokes. There was only the soft clink of cutlery and furtive glances exchanged among them. I let them eat in silence. Until Dad set his glass down, the faint sound of glass cutting through the air like a knife. "When did you buy this house?" he asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. "The day you signed the sale agreement," I replied calmly. Dad looked at his hands, rubbing his thumb as if soothing an old guilt. He took a deep breath and looked up. "I sold the house to save Derek." All eyes turned to him. Mom dropped her spoon. Tanya froze. Derek, who'd been trying to act unfazed, slumped as if pulled from an honorary seat. Dad continued slowly and heavily. He took out loans to open a restaurant chain. Bad investments, lost everything. I co-signed. When the bank came calling, I had no choice. No one spoke. No one accused. But the air was thick with unspoken questions. I set my glass down and stood. I returned with a slim leather folder. Opening it, I pulled out a printed document with a red bank stamp. I placed it gently in front of Dad. "That debt. It's gone." Mom leaned forward looking at it. "The Norfolk Bank branch. The mortgage on the house. Paid in full 3 weeks ago," I said. "No way," Tanya whispered. I turned to Derek, who could no longer feign composure. "You had a chance to explain, but you chose silence. That's okay. I didn't do this to shame anyone." Dad looked at me, his eyes misty. I'll never forget that look. Not gratitude, not shame, but something purer relief mixed with regret, meeting in a fleeting moment. "Why?" he asked softly. "Why did you do it?" I quietly poured him more wine. "Because I didn't want anyone else to lose this house. Even though I was the one lost from it first." Mom bowed her head, her hands trembling. "You could have blamed us. You could have been angry. You could have done anything to make us feel guilty," she said through gritted teeth. "But you didn't." I placed my hand on the table gently. A grown-up isn't someone with the right to be angry. It's someone who knows when anger isn't needed anymore. No one spoke. The air was thick with emotion. A silence not born of distance, but of touching the core of family love. Missteps, mistakes, but still capable of finding each other if you sit together long enough. I didn't save the house, I said, looking out the window where the sea murmured into the night. I just put it back where it belongs in my heart. You're allowed to be wrong. And I'm allowed to start over. Dad stood. He walked toward me hesitant, then placed his hand on my shoulder the way he used to when I was a kid who'd fallen. I'm sorry, I nodded. No words of forgiveness were needed because in my heart, it had already happened before he spoke. I pulled out my phone, opening an app. A new message from the board: Elena Brooks promoted to Vice President for Asia effective next month. I quietly locked the screen, looked at everyone around the old dining table where I was once the extra person now waiting silently for me to speak. I smiled. Tomorrow I'll announce my promotion, and I might be in Hong Kong for a while. But before that, I want to do one thing. They looked up. I raised my glass. I want to invite you all to stay for dinner in this house as a family. Not to revisit the past, but to see each other with new eyes. The glasses clinked, quietly, gently, like forgiveness poured into each heart. I don't know if this will heal every crack, but I know one thing: forgiveness doesn't change the past, but it opens a future resentment could never achieve. As I stood to clear the last dishes, I knew this meal wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. Tomorrow I'll tell the world who I am, but tonight I'm just a daughter standing among her family, no longer left out. And maybe that's the greatest victory of my life. I'd never seen my mother wear that coat in summer. A thick, gray-green wool completely out of place in Virginia's warm air. But this morning she put it on as she left the house, without looking at anyone, without a word, only the soft click of the door. I watched her go without saying anything. Breakfast was still untouched on the table. The coffee she brewed was still steaming. But she was gone. I knew where she went. No one in the house mentioned last night. After dinner, or rather after Dad's confession and Mom's silence, no one touched dessert. I remember how Derek kept his head down when I placed the mortgage papers in front of Dad, how Tanya's eyes darted from me to him, and most clearly Mom's look, empty, silent, neither agreeing nor opposing. That's when I knew she wasn't ready to face it. She didn't return until noon. The door opened softly. I was in the living room replying to emails for the Singapore strategy team. She stopped at the threshold, eyes red and swollen, her face slightly stunned as if she'd met someone from her past unprepared. The bank said, she began, her voice hoarse, the person who paid off the loan, was a woman named Elena Brooks. I looked up, setting the laptop aside. My gaze stayed steady on her face, but I said nothing. It was you, wasn't it? I nodded. Not lightly, not slowly, not hesitantly. I was ready for this moment. She pulled out a chair, and for the first time since I returned, she sat across from me. No more distance between kitchen and living room, between server and served. Just two women, mother and daughter, facing each other and truly seeing each other for the first time. You did everything, she said softly, and I never asked you anything. I wanted to believe that was an apology, but it felt like fragile mist. Not heavy, not thick enough to hold, but not entirely gone either. I didn't do it to be asked, I replied. I did it because otherwise this house would be gone. She looked around at the freshly painted walls, polished furniture, new window frames, white curtains swaying gently in the sea breeze. I saw her take a deep breath. Your father, she whispered, he didn't tell anyone. He hid it from me too. I knew. I'd known since the lawyer sent me the appraisal and credit records. I'd read every line he signed, every note explaining for my youngest son, hoping to save his company. He didn't want you all to be disappointed, she continued, and I didn't know where to start. You succeeded so fast, Elena. Too far beyond what I could understand. I don't need you to understand, I replied. I just need you to believe. Her eyes welled up. I didn't know how hard it was for you. I thought you chose to live alone because you were proud, because you didn't want to come back. But now I see I'm the one who made it impossible for you to return. I didn't nod or shake my head. Some things don't need confirmation. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said, but if possible, I want to know you. Not the girl who studied abroad, not some vice president far away, but my daughter. I looked at her, and for the first time in years I saw my mother, not the one who compared me to Tanya, Not the one who brushed off my talk of investment projects years ago, but a real mother trying to understand the daughter she'd once abandoned. "Then let's start with lunch today," I said gently. "I know you like Southern-style meat sandwiches. I can make them myself." She smiled, a weak but genuine smile. "I'll help you chop the onions." And so in that old kitchen, two women chopped onions together, hands trembling with unnamed emotions. I don't know if the cracks of so many years can fully heal, but I know those knife cuts for the first time weren't to divide, but to prepare a meal together. Some things don't need apologies, just presence. That evening we had a full family dinner. No one mentioned the bank or my Bloomberg feature. But Mom's eyes as she poured my water as she touched my shoulder when standing up said more than any belated apology could. I know complete forgiveness isn't there yet, but we've begun. Then my phone rang. A call from Hong Kong. The Asia Regional Director wanted to confirm the merger project's launch schedule. I looked at Mom, then answered, "Yes, I'm ready." I'd never seen a room so quiet. Under the soft golden lights of the Grand Richmond Hotel's Grand Hall, the reunion was more formal than ever before. A long table draped in white silk crystal wine glasses, glinting in candlelight, and a string quartet playing softly in the corner. Every detail was flawless, and none of them knew I was behind it all. I didn't appear right away. I waited. Watching from a distance, I saw Mom asking the staff about the organizer. Tanya frowned at the French menu's hard-to-read dishes. Derek hurriedly Googled foie gras ingredients. Dad has always stayed quiet, trying to maintain dignity despite his suffocating tie. I entered as the music shifted to Claire de Lune. A small detail, but enough for Savannah standing with Remington to turn and smile, as if everything was finally about to be revealed. "It's time," I said softly. Remington didn't speak. He quietly opened his briefcase and pulled out one thing, that morning's Wall Street Journal, with my face on the cover. Below the photo was the headline, "Elena Brooks, the young face shaping Asia's markets." He placed the paper on the main table right in front of Mom. Mom looked down. Silence. Dad looked up. Tanya choked on her words. Derek froze, mid-pour, eyes wide. I sat in the empty chair at the head of the table, the family patriarch's seat. I didn't need to speak. They'd read it. The paper trembled in Mom's hands as she turned the page. Her voice cracked as she read aloud, "The youngest regional vice president in the company's history who personally negotiated and closed the $3.4 billion Richardson deal." Tanya looked at me as if realizing I existed for the first time. Dad cleared his throat. Derek stood. I'm sorry," he said, his voice so soft I almost didn't hear it. "For what I asked, calm. For thinking you were just a shadow." Derek swallowed hard, and for doing things no one in this family could have imagined. I looked around. No one dared hold my gaze for long. I didn't feel triumph. Just stillness. "I don't need apologies," I said. "And I didn't do all this for revenge." I touched my wine glass, my voice gentle but firm. "I'm just living the life everyone thought I couldn't." Another silence, but this time it was a listening silence. "How long have you been doing this?" Mom asked, her voice breaking. "Longer than you think," I replied. "I grew up while everyone was looking elsewhere." Remington stepped forward, handing over another printout, a Bloomberg analysis, The Brooks Effect, How a Woman Under 35 Redefined Global Finance. Mom looked at the paper, then at me. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" I smiled faintly, because I did, but no one listened. Tanya froze. For the first time, my older sister had no words. Derek bowed his head, and Dad, who'd been silent all dinner, placed his hand on my shoulder, squeezing lightly. "I'm proud," he said. I didn't nod or cry. I just looked into his eyes. I don't need pride. I just need to be valued as a real daughter. Mom turned to Savannah. You're Elena's best friend." Savannah nodded, and the one who heard her cry every Christmas because she wasn't invited. The air grew heavy, not with anger or resentment, but with things left unsaid. I stood looking toward the glass door to the balcony. I didn't throw this party to show off. I threw it to close an old chapter and start a new one. Mom looked at me, her eyes red. "Can you give me a chance?" I didn't answer right away. "If you really want it," I said softly, "you'll have to step out of silence and into my world." No one spoke for a few seconds. Only the music swelled a turning melody like my life shifting direction. At the end of the party, as everyone returned to their rooms, Mom approached me in the quiet hallway. "You've done what I never dared dream," she whispered. I turned to her. No resentment, no smugness. Just an Elena who'd grown calm enough to know that recognition sometimes comes not from applause, but from a silence that can no longer deny you. I'd nearly finished packing for my morning flight to Hong Kong. Passport, merger contracts, financial documents all neatly compiled by Remington and my assistant in a sleek silver suitcase. I personally folded each suit silk blouse, and even the smallest personal items, because I knew this departure wasn't just a business trip, but the start of a new chapter, far from every old version of Elena. It was late, but I wasn't sleeping. The bedroom's soft golden light glowed curtains swaying gently in the night breeze. I sat on the bed's edge, eyes on the old wooden dresser where I used to hide letters in high school, where I wrote my first economics report at midnight while everyone slept. Everything here, though refurbished, still carried the familiar scent only an old house could hold. A soft knock sounded. I wasn't surprised. I just said gently, "Come in, Mom." The door opened. Mom stood there wearing a beige sweater, holding something small, wrapped in emerald silk. She didn't look at me right away, but around the room, as if searching for an old version of Elena in this new space. "You're not asleep?" she asked softly. I shook my head. "I fly tomorrow. I wanted to pack everything myself." She stepped closer, slow, as if afraid to break something fragile. Then she placed the box on the bedside table, unwrapping the silk. It was an old silver-plated wooden box, likely kept for years. I recognized it instantly, the box I'd seen on the top shelf of her locked closet, the one she never let me touch. "I've kept this for nearly 20 years, she said, hand on the lid. "I never thought you'd be sitting here in this room the night before, going halfway across the world." I looked at her, silent. She opened the lid. Inside was a stack of letters, scholarship offers from schools I'd been accepted to: Yale, Chicago, NYU. Next to them, a photo of me in my graduation gown, one I thought no one kept. There were essays I wrote at 17 graded A+, and a National Student Association award. I froze. I read them whenever I felt I'd gone too far, she said, eyes on the box. "I thought not encouraging you would make you stronger. That if you felt unacknowledged, you'd try twice as hard." I took a deep breath. "That's not how you love a child, Mom." She nodded. For the first time, she didn't deny it. "But I didn't bring this just for you." She continued, reaching under the old papers. She pulled out something small, cold, heavy, and placed it in my hand. A key. Rusty, old-fashioned, long and slender, the key to the old house, before my parents changed the locks when I moved away. "I never gave it to you back then," she said, "but I kept it. In my mind, I always thought, one day if you came back, I'd give it to you, as a sign that the door was still open." I looked at the key, my heart aching. For so many years, I thought every door had closed forever. "I'm back, Mom," I said softly, "but as a completely different person." She nodded. "I know. And I regret not holding on to the old you well enough that you didn't have to become a stranger to come back." A silence enveloped us. But it wasn't the silence of distance anymore. It was the silence of acceptance. I held the key. "I won't use it to open the old door," I said, "but I'll keep it as proof you once waited for me to return." She squeezed my hand lightly. "This time, I'm not asking if you forgive me. I'm just asking you not to carry that anger to Hong Kong." I shook my head, smiling. "I'm not taking anger anywhere. It stays with the old memories. Me, I'm taking gratitude. Because from now on, you'll see me with new eyes." She nodded, her voice trembling. "And when you come back, I hope I'll be a different mother, the one you always deserved." She stood quietly, leaving the room. As the door closed, I looked at the box, then the key on the table. No more bitterness, just layers of emotions overlapping, like thin dust covering things never touched. I tucked the key into my coat pocket, then returned to my suitcase. Tomorrow I'd fly, but this time I wasn't leaving to escape. I was going to begin where I always belonged. Not the airport, not the hotel, but the beach house where everything began and nearly ended. Morning sunlight slanted through the palm trees out front. The sea breeze carried its salty tang, but this time it didn't make me feel alone. I stood on the steps, suitcase beside me, my charcoal travel coat draped over my shoulder. Mom was brewing tea in the kitchen. Dad stood in the yard, hands in pockets, looking at me with something, not distance, but acceptance. The whole family woke early to see me off. No one asked. No one demanded. They just came. Tanya was the first to approach, holding her daughter Lily's hand. Lily, 10, with pigtails and bright, sharp eyes like mine at that age. Still got room in that Hong Kong apartment, Tanya asked, her voice soft but nervous. I nodded. Then, I think Lily should see that world. I want her to live with you for a bit, to learn to be strong and not afraid of being different. I paused for a second, then knelt to hug Lily. She beamed, grabbing my hand like we'd known each other forever. I'll teach you Cantonese before your mom even learns the alphabet. I teased, making Tanya laugh, and for the first time in years, a hug between sisters without a sigh in between. Derek came later, the brother who slacked in school, chased investments like a game, and indirectly caused my parents to nearly lose everything. I'm sorry again, he said as he approached. But now, I want to learn for real. I want to know what investing is, not to win big, but to understand how you built this empire. I looked into his eyes, seeing something sincere and humble I'd never seen before. You'll learn I corrected emphasizing you, and I'll send you a list of the first books. The family laughed this time, a real unforced laugh. Mom even poured more tea, and Dad, rarely emotional, stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder. You didn't break tradition, he said. You redefined it, and made it better. I didn't know if that was his most official acknowledgement, but it was enough for me to squeeze his hand back and nod like a promise. After breakfast, the family gathered in the yard. Something unexpected happened when Mom pulled a thin stack of papers from her coat pocket registration forms for a Mandarin class at the local community center. The whole family's learning, she said. Next reunion, we'll hold it in Hong Kong, where you're rebuilding yourself and opening the door for us again. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The moment you realize you're no longer the one left out, but the one leading the way. The car took me from the house's gate, the first time in years, with the family waving goodbye. But my journey didn't end there. A month later, I sent a letter back. The beach house, with my parents' approval, was turned into a summer scholarship center for underprivileged kids. I named it Brooks House, a way to keep the family name, but infuse it with a new soul. Every year, 30 kids are accepted into the program. They learn languages, skills, and most importantly, self-worth. Something I lacked for so long, and I don't want anyone else to grow up with that feeling. My parents' names are engraved on a bronze plaque at the center's gate. Below it, a small line, I wrote, "Family isn't where you're born. It's where you have the courage to rebuild." My Hong Kong flight landed in the early morning sun. I stepped out of the airport, not just as a vice president, but with the calm heart of someone who'd found what matters most. I was never one to fear goodbyes. Flights, job transfers, new email addresses, they'd made me adept at leaving without looking back. But this morning, standing in the international terminal, as the boarding call sounded a second time, I realized there's another kind of goodbye. The kind where you don't really leave, you close a chapter. I'd printed my boarding pass, checked my luggage. My carry-on was neat, my body clock adjusted to Hong Kong time. I didn't even use an assistant wanting to handle every step like a fully personal journey. I wasn't expecting anyone to show up, so I didn't know how to react when I saw Mom step through the terminal doors carrying a paper bag, her hair neatly tied back. Dad followed a few steps behind, silent, but eyes fixed on me. Tanya arrived next, Lily running ahead, hugging my legs. Derek waved from a distance, his backpack slung over one shoulder like he was just dropping me off at a bus stop, simple, unpretentious. No one brought flowers. No gifts, no banners. Just people, once parts of my life I tried to erase, standing here at the airport gate, as if all these years they'd been waiting for me to pause. "You haven't left yet?" Mom asked, her voice so soft I almost didn't hear. I shook my head. 10 minutes until the flight. She nodded. Then opened the paper bag, pulling out a small box. "I didn't bring much. Just some oatmeal cookies you loved as a kid. I baked them myself. Not sure if your taste is still the same." I took the box. Didn't open it. Didn't need to try them. Knowing she remembered was enough. Dad stepped closer. Said nothing. He extended his hand, and I took it, the first handshake from him in years that didn't carry blame or lessons. "Just you did it." And I realized some acknowledgments don't need words. Tanya placed a hand on my shoulder. "If you need someone to watch Lily longer, I'll handle it. If she's a bother, I'll pick her up right away." I looked at Lily, who grinned, already practicing Cantonese on her iPad. I leaned down and whispered, "I'm not bothered. I'm just a bit proud." Derek, still with his usual cockiness, finally approached. "I finished the first 3 books you sent, and lost a few $100 in stocks." He gave a wry smile. "But I think I'm learning for real this time." I nodded, not joking back like usual. Instead, I said something I'd never told him. "You've still got chances. Just don't treat them as temporary this time." The airport speaker sounded again. Final call for Hong Kong. I turned, looking at them all. I don't forgive everything I said, voice calm, but clear, but I'm giving you a chance. Not because I forget, but because I have the right to choose. Mom hesitated, then nodded. That's all I ask, a chance to start over. I turned and walked away. Didn't look back, but at the security gate I paused, opening the small box Mom gave me. Inside, beside the cookies, was a handwritten note, her familiar script. Family isn't built on blood. It's built on small actions at the right time. I squeezed the note, folded it, and slipped it into my coat pocket, then kept walking. On the plane, as the seatbelt sign lit up, I leaned back, closing my eyes. But my heart wasn't heavy like past departures. This time I wasn't leaving behind people who didn't understand me. I'd just said goodbye for the first time to a family I chose to keep. I still remember the moment the first light spilled through the 37th floor window of my new Hong Kong office at IFC. The sunlight wasn't harsh, but enough to make the espresso on my desk steam faintly. I placed my hand on the sleek black stone table, slowly savoring the feeling, no longer the one rejected, but one with space to choose. On my laptop screen, a new email appeared. The subject was simple: "We're coming, Mom." I read it over and over, not rushing to reply. No need. Knowing they were packing, getting passports, preparing to cross time zones was enough. I don't know if they're nervous, but I am. Over a month since the airport goodbye. Everything in Hong Kong feels like I've arrived where I belong. The office, the team, the press, the market is ready for me. But family isn't that simple. They're not a market to persuade with data or strategy. They're my past, and it took me a long time to learn not to define myself by it alone. Savannah walked in carrying 2 matcha lattes and documents for next week's investor conference. She set a cup before me, then sat across, crossing her legs on the chair as always. "Ready, first reunion in Asia, right in your new apartment. Pretty grand." I nodded. Lily's prepared her Cantonese welcome speech. Tanya's been practicing with her every night. Mom's asking if restaurants serve mung bean dessert. And Derek, he's trying to use chopsticks without breaking glasses. Savannah laughed. "Think they've gotten it yet?" I thought for a moment, then replied, half joking, half serious. "They don't need to get it, as long as they don't forget me anymore." I didn't say accept. I don't need that. I just need them to remember I'm still part of the family, whether they denied or forgot it before. That afternoon, I went to the apartment where the reunion would happen. The balcony opened to Victoria Harbor. The breeze from the bay swept through the white curtains and the faint scent of lemongrass I'd lit in the living room. I set up a small gathering, no champagne, no media, no long speeches. Just an album of old summer photos from the beach house, a framed picture on the table, my parents holding me on my 4th birthday, and a guest book where I wanted everyone to write one thing they remembered about me truly. It sounds childish, but I realized for years what I lacked wasn't achievements, but memories. No one remembered I was the one singing in the bathroom, sneaking extra chocolate into Mom's cookies, or writing thank you letters to Dad after exams. I thought being good enough would make them remember, but it turns out what makes you unforgettable are the smallest things. The doorbell rang. Lily burst in first, pulling a purple suitcase, shouting, "Auntie, I'm here, and I can count to 10 in Cantonese." Tanya followed, eyes red, not from emotion, but jet lag. Still, she hugged me tightly, whispering, "Thank you for giving me a chance to be a sister again." Mom came in wearing an ivory ao dye she brought from the US. In her hands was a box of oatmeal cookies this time, wrapped in wax paper tied with pink ribbon. She didn't say much, just held my hand for a long time. Dad followed, carrying a suitcase, silent. But when he entered the living room and saw the photo on the table, he quietly placed his hand on it. No words, just a touch enough to know he remembered. Derek came last, carrying a basic finance book in Chinese. "I haven't understood it all," he said, "but this time I really want to." I smiled. The afternoon passed in warm sunlight, scattered laughter and stories we thought we'd forgotten. Everyone wrote a line in the guest book. When it was my turn, I didn't write about success. I just wrote thank you for not forgetting me. As everyone left the balcony and I cleared the cups, Savannah, still lingering, turned to ask, "So, do you think you've won?" I thought for a moment. "No, because this wasn't a competition," I replied. "But if there's anything to call a victory, it's that I didn't lose my heart in all those races." I placed the guest book on the shelf next to a wooden statue carved with the Chinese word for family. In my heart, I was no longer the kid standing outside the frame. I was the one who created a new picture and invited them to step in. As I put the final period on this story, I'm not just closing Elena's journey, but opening a door for us to reflect on the deepest value of family, not perfection, but the ability to forgive and choose to walk together again. I've told you about a woman who didn't choose resentment, though she had every right to. She didn't destroy tradition, she redefined it with grace and self-respect. Through each chapter, I hope you felt that success isn't about retaliation, but transcendence. Every small action, a kept letter, a rusty key, can soothe years of distance. If you've ever felt forgotten or undervalued in your own home, remember, you can rewrite how you're remembered. Thank you for staying with me to this final line. Follow for more stories and leave a comment if this touched something in you. I'll read every word.